So welcome Susana and Hortense here at Landazine presentation. You are LILA 2021 winner in the garden category. Your forest garden won with a great enthusiasm from the jury. And today you are here to present a little bit the project. So I hope you will also show us some photos that our audience wasn't able to see it yet. Some new photos, and please go ahead, start your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having us. We're happy to share some more. Yeah.
So this is Mexico first, and in red is Mexico City. The site is near Mexico City, but I think it was important to place it in the country.
Yeah, to give you a bit of context.
This is Mexico City, this beige spread, and the site is 2 hours away by car from Mexico City in a region, Valle de Bravo, which is famous for its lake, water, it's a temperate climate. So it's an opportunity for everyone to actually have a cool weather, have other species growing. And this is so it's a context of work which is very specific to Mexico. Here are some images of the site. So this site is a 1.2 hectare large. It's a pine and oak tree forest, but that was damaged. It was not like a beautiful, perfect forest that you don't want to touch. It was more like, okay, what do we do? There are some old, very mature pine trees. Oak trees were almost non-existing. So, and it was a very difficult site to get into. So we have pictures that are looking up. It was very difficult to walk in.
Yeah, these are photographs from the first visit that we did.
Yeah, and then it has at the south part finally an open space, which is like a meadow with beautiful flowers. This is taken in December. So seasons are quite different in Mexico. To my perception now that it's autumn in Europe, it would be like summer in Mexico, which means that flowers are all over the place and are starting to seed. So this is the landscape you see in December. Mm-hmm. So we were amazed by this messy forest damage, but also by these open spaces that would really give you like something to look at or to breathe a bit. Mm-hmm. And actually, yeah, coming back to this one. So our process always starts by an analysis of species, of what exists, also recognizes them, because a lot of species are not known in Mexico. So you don't even have a book that will tell you which species is what. So there we have this interest of making in each project a knowledge of what is there from herbaceous plants to trees. Mm-hmm. So this is how we start. And then we look at how this project will have like strong concept that we will follow all along the project. Mm-hmm. So for this one, we looked at the idea of creating glades. That okay, there was a house to be built, actually the three squares. So these houses would open up spaces in the forest. We thought, well, that's an opportunity, and maybe it works to actually create glades and work with glades in this land. And we're interested in seeing how each glade would have a different shape. A glade is not always a circle. It can be long, it can be with a slope, it can be flat, mm-hmm. and it can welcome different programs.
And all the advantages that could bring in terms of different experiences for the inhabitants, no? It's also part mm-hmm. of it.
And then it's a very sloped site. So there was this challenge of how to arrive smoothly, and also how to have a design that would integrate, that would play with this topography. So there were long walls inserted in the landscape with stairs. And then finally, we're thinking, we thought that we could use that instead of only having circulation that are practical, and of course you always have this practicality to follow in landscape project, but we're also interested by how we create paths that are just a meandering path in the forest to enjoy the whole land, because it's actually quite big. So how do you go up, because there's an interest, even if there are nothing constructed, how you go down, how you would cross a glade, how you would pick up a fruit on the way. This experience of walking within your own property, because we're in Mexico. So there's I think different with Europe is that you actually give a lot of interest into your private land, because public spaces are not so developed and great. Not everyone has a park nearby. So people really put a lot of interest in their own land. I think that's a specificity. So that's a zoom on a section on what's happening around the house. It's an elevated house that was designed by Rosana Montiel in collaboration with Claudia Rodriguez. And the house was already playing with the topography, and we had the challenge of how the land would go under it, would follow, and how you would arrive smoothly, like not having this experience like us on site to be very tired going up and going down, but make it a nice experience.
And it was this mixture of steps plus the terrace plus different pathways in ramp. So every time it was a different experience depending on where you were on the land.
Yeah, to have a collection of ways to go up and down. I think to not get bored of how you could do that. And so that's the master plan that shows, well, how do you arrive and how do you go down to the house, how you have a terrace, how you go down again and arrive to the other house. And I think a strategy that is behind this master plan is in terms of larger scale. But the forest what was up all these areas we wanted to keep it as a reserve. It was in a good state with the pine trees, and what was around the buildings were this damaged oak tree forest. So the strategy was to plant 50 oak trees on this land to have in the future an oak tree forest, and on the lower part it was on purpose that we would keep this open meadow to have another experience, like the sun experience, because the rest is quite in the shade. And here you can see the different glades. The one that is up that we call forest glade. The whole entrance is the underwood steps. That was also thought as a glade. There was a playground created, a productive garden, and a natural pool in the meadow, and the terrace, which also works as a glade.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of our selection of vegetation, I guess it also goes very much with the functionality of the house. So, for example, if this was the area that was going to be used the most, this is where we put all the plants that perhaps need a little bit more maintenance. And on the lower side, that is just for visitors or more informal uses. We try to use species that can survive on their own. That's the idea, that nature would just present itself randomly and not have humans need to care for it as much.
Yeah, also because you're in a place that doesn't have running water. It's only rainwater harvest that is done through thanks to the roofs. So the natural pool and is also a rainwater pool. And the watering is done in the same way. So you do have to care about water. So now we're going to see some images that are either the result or the process, like to see this contrast in between what you get after and how it was done during. These images are taken 6 months after planting. So it means that it's been raining, and it means that there was this mess that we were interested in, which we were looking for to the impression of people choosing their way to go to their house. So to have this informal path, even though they were drawn, they were chosen on site, and you have the steps that that are giving you the indication of how to go down. So this is the entrance. The house entrance is this cube, this square. And let's see the other side. Oh, and a parenthesis on planting. So this first space was we've been using native plants like these ferns from Valle de Bravo, and also it's mixed with plants that would give you something, like this is a blueberry, the blurry one, so that children of this family could go walking around and just picking up some blueberries on the way. So this is kind of the logic in this planting design, is to use native plants, but to mix them with medicinal and productive plants. Mm-hmm. Also, because in Mexico, we can't find everything we want. We're very restrained on what is produced here, and even some Mexican plants that you could find in Europe or in the USA, they're usually that are Mexican. We can't buy it, we can't get it. So either there's a process of using seeds or reproducing plants during the construction, or working with some that are produced, which are, most of them are medicinal. And we like that side, which is also something that makes the Mexican culture still has to heal yourself through plants. And in this project, another subject was as we're not working on a site that is all empty or a walled garden. It's a site that is a forest. So we were interested by looking at how the gardens areas would disappear, how we would start not seeing the boundaries in between the forest and the garden. Mm-hmm. So some oak trees were brought, like these trees, native oak trees from Valle de Bravo. It was brought on purpose to make this boundary disappear.
Right. So to blur the lines in between, for example, this vegetation that was existing and this is what was planted, but we try to play with that limit as if the garden that we created could continue endlessly into the forest.
Mm-hmm. And these are the stone walls that were built on site with local stone. And this is, for instance, during the site construction, where we're looking at how these steps. So each steps is different. I mean, in each block of steps is different, and these ones were long and narrow, and the other ones are more like large and short to go down. And this is the state of this. The soil is very rich, very beautiful, but you don't want to leave it open. I mean, it's very heartbroken to see this land with no plants. So this was exactly before planting. Mm-hmm. Here are some other images of this is the Mexican sage, Salvia Mexicana, that grows in Valle de Bravo. And we like to highlight these plants. So this one is found in the planting design. And now you start seeing the relationship to the other side of the house, to this elevated house, and what would happen under it. We like the idea that you could see through in some part, and that you could understand that there's a terrace on the other side. And so that's the other side of the house, the terrace, which has the same logic but a complete different planting design, but it has the same logic in the sense of some native trees were brought, like this madrone tree that is from Valle de Bravo as well. Some rocks were brought as well to either become a seat or highlight a tree. There's a hidden jacuzzi here, and the planting is a mix of herbal plants. The kitchen is nearby, but the idea was not to have a herbal garden in like squares, but more like the idea that you can go pick up some rosemary or some garlic flowers that are found in this planting, but they are invisible. They are a surprise more than anything. And then, well, one of the biggest challenge in this project was to work with what would happen under this house, because this house was creating a large shady area. And we're wondering, well, which plant we can use, how we can make something interesting under the house. And so we worked with plants that are light-catching species, like the Artemisia, the fennel flower, which is a beauty, and also the agave. Like, I think we like the idea that agave is not only a desertic plant. Like, a lot of agaves actually grow under trees in forests. It's very wide. So we like the idea of having this surprise of finding this beautiful agave under the house. And we used the tree ferns that are also from Mexico. So that was the result under the staircase. That's during the process when nothing was planted yet, when we're looking at the steps, how you would go up to the house, from the house to the land.
And also the topography under the house, we were deciding on the slopes, whether it was to be very steep or we would like it soft, so you have this continuance with the other side of the house, not behind.
Mm-hmm. Another picture of the process for the jacuzzi, which has the same stone as the walls, and is at the ground level on purpose to have this feeling that you're sitting surrounded by vegetation and by the forest. Like, you have this very more domestic garden, which is the one we saw before around you, and the far landscape, the further landscape is the forest. No? Mm-hmm. Well, in the process, we spent a lot of time on site, checking what would be the planting limits, where the stone would be. We like the contrast in between an AutoCAD plan where everything is calculated and what is actually happening on site.
Yeah, I think these images are very revealing of the process we actually do. We plan everything beforehand, but once we're on site, we're very free to just change where the stones would be, where the limit of the planting, like everything is up to what is happening in that day, you know. So it's
to feeling and instinct. Some other pictures of what's happening under the house. This is in a patio. It's actually an open part of the house, and so here you have self-climbing species, because this concrete house is quite monumental. Yeah, so we like the idea of how it would be eaten by vegetation through time. So that was planted on purpose with messy, but I mean, it looks messy. It's a controlled planting, but it's on purpose a mix of a lot of species, like the experience you would have in this forest, that you would see a flower and then you see this tree, and then you always looking at different scales of vegetation. So this is what we're trying to reproduce.
Also playing a lot with that element of surprise, the same that Hortense was explaining with the agave. We try to play with planting some vegetation that would take longer to grow, but then the user can see that through time. So 6 months later or 1 year later, something would appear and would be like completely unexpected. That's the sort of the idea with this mixture of plants.
Mm-hmm. And now we're going down the site. So this is a natural pool that was built as well. It counts as another glade. It's a space that was opened up, and that is filled with rainwater, and that works with aquatic plants. So there's no chloro. It's not a swimming pool, but it's used as a pool. It's called fresh water. So we like also here there was the idea of seeing all the children that this family has sitting on the pond, by the pond, and jumping, having this experience of cold water, and then going back to the house and being by the fire. And now we're looking at the other house that is also in the southern part. Here it's another planting that was used, which also mixes native plants like escobo, which is a Baccarus conferta, the scientific name, I don't know the English name. It's a plant that you find there, but you don't really look at it. It's this green one, and it was mixed with sage and achillea to have this very flowering mix. It's only a small portion in front of the house, and then it helps us to have a nice transition with the actual existing meadow, which is this in these images we can see both the more green area with flowers that will have more flowers during the year, and then this meadow that will have flowers only like 3 months or 4 months during the year. Mm-hmm. This is a picture taken in winter time. You have trees with no leaves, so just to appreciate what is a dry winter landscape like in Valle de Bravo. Some citric, some lemon and orange trees were planted as well to still have this pleasure of being able to pick up a fruit. And then the final glade is the vegetable garden, which is also a space that was opened up in the forest. And some big nests, we call them nests, and at the end it became the name of the house. It's called the nest house, this place. We use a shrub that grows in the forest that we can see behind to create these beds.
To weave, yeah.
So there was an interesting process here to be using the material that is on site, to be cutting shrubs that are found there, and to create these beds that would be playing with the topography. So we're still in a slope, and the beds are flat. So they start at 30 centimeter high, and then they go up to 90, I think, the highest. So you have these different heights to be working with the vegetable.
And that also helped a lot with the children. So it was at their height, some of the beds, to be able to play within what was planted.
Mm-hmm. So that's the process of using planting the sticks. It was a forest of sticks, the beginning of this project, and then the nests were formed with layers of geotextile, I can't remember
the name in English.
Well, this
fabric, yeah.
This fabric, and then it was filled with a lot of organic matter. And at the end, from above, it has this like primitive character that we really were surprised by, because on CAD everything was curved, but of course on site it becomes these curves that are not completely mastered.
Mm-hmm. And also this photograph was just taken right after, like not even because this is a circle, and all around there are fruit trees that haven't been planted. You can see them still in the bags. And then what happened is that the pathway was earth, but then the rest of the nest are in green ground soil cover. So mm-hmm. It's still processed photographs.
I think that's this we want to share about forest garden.
Is this your first project that you've done, a Studio Ome, like a proper project?
Yeah, it's actually the first project we did when
together at Estudio Ome.
Yeah.
Again, congratulations for the project. And I was going to ask you about the client, because not so many clients have affinity to have the wilderness coming so close to them. So is this a special client, or you have some kind of persuasion techniques that you can...
Well, I guess the first important thing to say here is that the land, it's already in a natural reserve. Mm-hmm. So most of the people that buy there, all of the clients have already this longing or want to be living within nature.
Okay.
And all of them, I guess, also understand, because the reserve works with these water harvesting lakes. So they all understand this relationship to the infrastructure at the larger scale and not only their land. And so that's already a big part of how they come to us. It's a big conscience.
Also because maybe the garden culture in Mexico exists, but is very has been shadowed by European culture of garden since colonization. So people have this idea of also like street gardens, alignments. I think everyone is tired of it,
Yeah.
and people are happy with looking at a landscape that is natural looking, but is not completely. So I guess that's why it worked, this process, and we were able to really explore through plantings, through the path, the steps, a lot of concept that we would have loved to do in other projects.
And then also just being so close to Mexico City, like this house are always the escape from the extremely urbanized environment. You want the other opposite, right? So the extreme nature, and I guess that's why they were all for it.
Yeah, and Hortense, you said that you are in Versailles. You are educated in Versailles,
Yes.
which is kind of really garden-oriented. Let's say, am I right to say that it's kind of more garden-oriented school? Did you find any troubles, shifting to another climate?
Well, I think it was an adaptation, but it was more an excitement than a fear. Like, I think in each project we're facing new ecosystems. Mm-hmm. Now we have some project in desertic place or in rainforest. So each time there is a time to analyze in which ecosystem we are. But for instance, in Valle de Bravo, it was not so different from what I knew because it was actually closed. We used techniques that I've learned in France about oak tree forest. So there were dynamics that I knew, mm-hmm. I guess.
So the bigger challenge would be the desert, I guess.
Yeah.
And Susana, you are architect actually. Yeah?
Yes, I was trained as an architect. Right?
Okay, but now focusing more, or you will start to explore kind of...
I think now focusing completely on landscape. I think I'm enamored by the idea and just, it's for me also a learning process, not much about the landscape or the context, but just about the profession. So distancing myself from architecture and going into landscapes and gardens.
Yeah.
A nice challenge.
Welcome. So now you said some more projects.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
okay.
That is, it's called Meadow. It's a project. It's also a collaboration with Rosana Montiel and Claudia Rodriguez. It's two pavilions that have been built. And in this one, we arrived after the construction, more to help with what do we do with the landscape around the pavilions. And so this one it's more like a one action. It's completely different from the one we saw before, which was planned. It was a year of designing. This one is a short intervention of bringing plants, working with topography. Almost everything was decided on site. And the main challenge was to get the vegetation come back, because of course the construction has made it become a desertic area, and it was this challenge: how do we get the meadow back? It was a beautiful cempasúchil flower meadow. So these are some pictures of the process where the topography was being worked, the soil was being moved. And we are working. We worked in a way to get back to this. So this is 1 year after the intervention. So we had to wait another season to get the meadow come back. So here there was only, in terms of plantings, there was only a few trees brought, like native oak trees or specific new species like the feijoa that we can see here, to have an interest in a new flower. The client is someone who loves flowers, so it was really about getting the flowers back. And And this is the result. So we've used seeds that were harvested in this area before, and that were used after the construction. Paths were drawn, like very simple path, but that lead the water to rainwater garden. Like this is one that is hidden in the shape of I forgot
like
my
a water
English.
drop. Or...
Yeah, like a water drop. And that's another point of view with a large tree was brought to give some intimacy to the pavilion. Some of the new trees that help to make a scenery with the house, and some even roses were brought to climb on top of the facades. Like I think we like the oddness of having flowers coming out of not of nowhere, but that are not from this place. I mean, the rose is definitely not from there, and then you would have all this wild vegetation. So this contrast of oddness and
also to have this contact with nature a bit more subtler. So you have this species that you would recognize and they make you come closer, but then there is all this behind that it's at the moment unappreciated, but this powerful environment, the idea was that it would enrich that view. That's sort of the goal.
Kind of a mixing of the two approaches, right? Like a paradox.
Exactly. And also allowing it for it to come back. So the introduction of plants was very much precise or limited, and we would allow the native flowers to just come every season. That's part of the...
Yeah, it's a strategy of where do you plant. So it's like by this slope, by the windows, and then the rest would be a strategy with native seeds. So here there was a process of making there was a conversation with the client to understand how it would take a year to see the result, like to say it from the beginning. The meadow will come back in a year, but in the meantime you would have these pockets of plants. There's a magnolia somewhere, there's just a few characters in the garden, and I think that the result is this this very bright and full of flowers landscape. Like you had hummingbirds coming back. There was really this pleasure on the side to see things come back, and we had to use new plants. Like here you see lavanda and peniceto. That are not native to Mexico, but that allowed a first landscape to be there the first months, and then you would have the meadow come back. So that was another one that we wanted to share.
I guess that's, yeah.
And I think this is it.
Right. I also saw that you made some kind of research into patios.
Right.
Was it you, Susana?
It was under my name, but we did it together. I guess the result of what we came to at the end was how important it is to start designing from the outside in. So designing those courtyards to begin with, and then see what architecture could come out of it, I think was more enriching and interesting as a perspective or as a tactic of design. I think that was, what would you?
Yeah, because in general, we like to still have the academic or theory part in the Estudio Ome, like to have both practice. I think it's very important for us. And this one comes from a grant that is given to young designers and artists. And this subject of the patio is also very related to Mexico. I mean, the patio is almost existing in every houses. And it brings the light, it brings an opportunity to have a small nature space next to you. So we started from there by analyzing what exists, not only Mexican patios, also worldwide. But to look at how the importance of the void, we love to say that we work with the void space, we work with spaces that are under the rain. The architecture is actually around it. So that was this research was about. And it basically brought a lot of examples, a lot of
references.
References. It's a book that hasn't been published yet, but hopefully one day.
But do you also do like competitions?
Well, we did begin our studio. We're a very young studio. We started 3 years ago, and we did begin by entering competitions. But it's always been a challenge in between putting our attention to projects that are already happening and projects that we want to get, and making our team grow. At the moment, we're just five people between architects, landscape architects, and designers. So not so much time that we have at the moment for competitions, but we like doing that as well.
Yeah, and I think about the public-private realm in Mexico, they are public project, and we're in some of them, like for parks, or it's more like a collaborative theme. It's usually architects doing the landscape architecture. Almost doesn't exist here.
As a recognized profession.
Yeah, it's mostly architects who do public projects. So we collaborate with these architects.
Is there a master's, at least for landscape architecture in Mexico City? I don't know now.
But there is one. The public university has the landscape architect diploma, but it's very small. I mean, in some maybe one or two other schools, but it's very, very small, and it's usually reduced to the private garden design, not to public space,
and very technical as well.
And who is then in Mexico City fighting for a better urban landscape? Is it architects,
biologists, designers, a lot of people, but it's not the same political system than in Europe here. So a lot of things are not being done in the public realm. But there are things, it's magical here. Sometimes you have something that happens very quickly. You will have a park being done, and sometimes you will work on something that is never going to exist. It's the time is very flexible here. It's either very quick or slow.
So usually when there are elections coming, there are more stuff being built.
Yeah, this also applies here.
This also applies. Okay, so that's global.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's been wonderful to hear the presentation. Of course, congratulations again for the award for the execution of this beautiful project. And I wish you all the best in the future. May Estudio Ome grow. And I hope we keep in touch, and we look forward to see your new projects. Keep us
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much
for inviting us.
It was a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.